Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hand. Let us, O her people, join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one strong and free, one land and one nation is our pride. Dignity and peace meet Zambia's sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one strong and free. Praise be to praise thee, praise thee, praise thee. Bless our great Zambia, Zambia, Zambia. Free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one strong and free. Prayer. Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness has appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to consider with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of such important responsibilities in this land. Let your blessing descend upon us here in Parliament assembled, and grant that we may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Announcements. Announcements. Honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence in the public galleries of the President of the Model Parliament Africa, Zambia, Her Excellency, Ms. Catherine Hasalama. On behalf of this assembly, I wish to warmly welcome the visitors in our midst. I thank you, and may you take your seat. Private members' motions. The Honorable Member for Chililaombwe constituency.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving the people of Chilambwe constituency, Zambia, and Africa at large a representation and a voice in this august house.
Order. Are you moving the motion or you are debating?
I'm moving the motion, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House urges the government to establish open borders with neighboring countries within SADC region to promote regional integration, trade, tourism, and economic cooperation.
Is the motion seconded?
It is seconded, Madam Speaker.
Seconded by the Honorable Member for Mukushi South, Ms. Lusungu. The question is that this House urges the government to establish open borders with neighboring countries within the SADC region to promote regional integration, trade, tourism, and economic cooperation. Any debate? The Honorable Member for Chilaombwe constituency.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and fellow citizens of Zambia. Madam Speaker and fellow citizens of Zambia, as I stand today, I do not only stand as a proud Zambian, but I stand as a proud African child. Madam Speaker, I do not only stand as a proud Zambian, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, guided by our proud words of our national anthem, we stipulate that Africa is our own motherland. We stand united in urging our government to open borders. Madam Speaker, this is more than policy. It is a bold commitment to our Pan-African spirit and to Mother Zambia's future. For decades, we have shared history, culture, and dreams with our neighbors across borders. By welcoming our neighbors under SADC and African countries at large, we honor our shared heritage and reach new opportunities. Madam Speaker, in this great African motherland, let us tear down barriers and build bridges of prosperity for all our people. Madam Speaker, despite Zambia's strategic location at the heart of Southern Africa, restrictive border controls, visa barriers, and slow customs procedures limit trade efficiency, tourism growth, and regional integration. Madam Speaker, hence, by opening borders, it will foster regional unity, security, and cooperation. What do I mean? What I mean is that open borders will be a concrete pledge of trust and solidarity among neighbors. By endorsing visa-free travel, Zambia signals that it sees its neighbors as partners deepening diplomatic ties. The Africans Agenda 2063 explicitly links open borders and movement to peace and unity. It calls for free movement of people and capitals through establishing a united Africa. Madam Speaker, the United Nations of Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, notes that trade agreements and integration reduces conflicts by binding economies together. Madam Speaker, indeed West Africa and East Africa have long touted their open border regimes as instruments of stability.
Order. Standing Order number 71 precisely stipulates that you shall make reference to documents that are before the House. Do you have those documents with you, and can you lay them on the table?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I beg to lay the documents on the table immediately I'm done with my debate.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Indeed, West Africa and East Africa have long touted their open border regimes as instruments of stability, Madam Speaker. ECOWAS citizens already enjoy borderless travel with identity cards, fostering a sense of Western African citizenship and cooperation. Madam Speaker, similarly, as African continental free trade area rolls out continent-wide, Zambia's willingness to open borders would bolster its role as a regional leader. It would enable joint patrols against crimes, harmonize healthy and safety standards, and share disaster responses across SADC and Africa at large. Madam Speaker, in short, what I mean, open borders strengthen alliances. They are a foundation for collective security, cultural exchange, and political goodwill that underpin lasting regional development. Madam Speaker, opening borders to African countries at large will facilitate labor, mobility, and transfer skills. What do I mean? Madam Speaker, what I mean is that free movement of people will let Zambia's workforce flourish and fill skill gaps. Madam Speaker, easy migration enables Zambians to work across the region and attract talent into Zambia's factories, farms, and clinics. Madam Speaker, critics underestimate the positive impact of opening borders. Africans moving for work spur incomes in both home and host countries. Madam Speaker, for Foreign-born workers make up only 10% of Cote d'Ivoire's population, but generate 19% of its GDP, which is a dramatic productive boost. Madam Speaker, in South Africa, Africa's largest economy, Madam Speaker, researchers find that recent migrants have increased enjoyment and wages for natives. On a broader scale, AU free movement has cut the AU's average unemployment rate by about 6%, Madam Speaker, showing that mobility supplements rather than local jobs. Madam Speaker, under SADC and Africa at large, Madam Speaker, Zambia could also attract seasonal and high-skilled workers legally, supporting growing sectors and relieving local labor shortages. Madam Speaker, the African Union explicitly ties labor mobility to development. Without liberalizing movement of people to a certain degree, it is impossible to achieve meaningful trade and continental integration. Madam Speaker, in short, open borders means Zambian. Thank you.
Does the seconder wish to speak now or later? You may proceed. The Honorable Member for Mukushi South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I represent the people of Mukushi. Madam Speaker, this is not just a motion that is bent on opening doors or borders. Madam Speaker, this is a motion that puts Zambia at the heart of Africa, geographically positioned. Madam Speaker, Zambia stands to gain at the opening of this motion. Madam Speaker, Zambia is a transport hub. Zambia is a trade hub. Madam Speaker, by implementing this policy, government stands at creating a pillar of transport and trade. Madam Speaker, this promotes market access to our products. Gone are the times where our products should only be known in the local. It is time for our products such as Boom, our local products like Sogo, to shine on international markets. Madam Speaker, it is time to promote value addition. When doors of trade are open with this policy, we will be forced to process our own copper. We will be forced to process our own timber, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Zambia stands at a position where it is surrounded by neighbors. We are no longer a nation that is away from the sea, away from the borders. We are land-linked. It is time we stand and take the benefits of land links, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this stands as an opportunity for Zambia to explore.
Order. May I draw to your attention Standing Order number 73, which references the relevance of your speech, and that you shall debate with factual matters in accordance to Standing Order number 71.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not taken. Madam Speaker, the opening of those borders promotes a high chance, an advantage for the kwacha to rise. Madam Speaker, may I bring to the attention of this House that Africa has 40 plus currencies. Madam Speaker, it is of late that the government has brought about a policy that all international trade must be done in the local currency. Madam Speaker, this will increase the demand of the kwacha and make our currency stronger. So if this is not a gain, I don't know what it is, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, according to the report made available to Daily Mail by the Bank of Zambia, it showed that the kwacha has stood at a strong currency. Madam Speaker, once these borders are open and trade is done in our local currency, Madam Speaker, we stand at a gain. Madam Speaker, opening up these borders brings skill exchange, knowledge exchange. Madam Speaker, a country is not going to survive on its own. Even a neighbor, we ask help from neighbors, Madam Speaker, and so shall it be with our country. Madam Speaker.
Honorable Member, need I remind you again of Standing Order number 73, relevance in accordance to your speech. I have not heard you reference the necessary documents, factual evidence in accordance to Standing Order number 71.
I will lay the evidence on the table, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
With your permission, once I'm done with my debate.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, being geographically advantaged gives us an opportunity to take advantage of this as a tourism booster, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, being at this position geographically is going to promote our trade and national resources. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further debate? The Honorable Member for Gwembe constituency.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share out my views on this matter. Madam Speaker, when it comes to nation trading with SADC regions, it sounds promising However, Madam Speaker, it sounds promising. However, Madam Speaker, free trade with SADC nations mostly benefit countries that add value to their resources and are industrialized. Madam Speaker, most of our commodities are exported in raw materials. In 2023, 78% of our copper was exported in raw materials, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we say that we're going to open borders, we're increasing the exportation of raw materials. And what does this mean? Madam Speaker, this means that we'll not only be exporting raw materials, but we'll be exporting jobs and revenues, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let's take a minute and look at our agriculture sector. Madam Speaker, let's take a minute and look at our agriculture sector. Maize, to be specific, mealie meal. Madam Speaker, we've seen a lot of cases where our mealie meal is being smuggled through the Kasumbalesa border. When we say that we want to open our borders, Madam Speaker, the smuggling will increase. It will mean that we'll have domestic shortages of mealie meal in our country. When we have shortages of mealie meal in our country, Madam Speaker, our prices will go up of mealie meal. Madam Speaker, let's look at that man in Gwembe constituency who is a family pillar, who barely earns a minimum wage. How are they going to survive, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, let's look at revenue. Borders are not just there for controlling. They are also a source of revenue for the government. This is the same money that we take for allocating to sectors such as the agriculture sector, the education sector, and any other sectors, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, how are we going to tell that mother in a hospital with a dying child, saying that the government does not have medicine because we prioritize free trade? Madam Speaker, let's look at that farmer in Gwembe constituency. How are we going to tell them that the government cannot support you because we no longer have funds? Madam Speaker, as a member of Parliament for Gwembe constituency, it is my duty to protect my people. Madam Speaker, let's go back to our currencies. Africa has more than 40 currencies as stipulated by the opposition. But Madam Speaker, most of our trade takes place in foreign currencies, not our own African currencies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what are we saying when we're going to allow free trade, Madam Speaker? It means that transactions will increase. But this trade will not be taking place in our own currencies. They'll be taking place in foreign currencies. They'll be taking place in foreign currencies, Madam Speaker. Our pressure for kwacha will increase. This means that our kwacha is going to depreciate and not appreciate, Madam Speaker. When our kwacha appreciates or depreciates, depreciates, Madam Speaker, inflation will rise. How are our people going to manage? Madam Speaker, our people are going to die of hunger. Madam Speaker, instead of us opening free trade, let us first look at the challenges that are hindering us from opening free borders, Madam Speaker. I raise my case.
Order, honorable members. Order. I now call upon the Honorable Member of Parliament for Serenje, Honorable Judith Mwansa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for according me the opportunity. My name is Judy Mwansa, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Serenje constituency. I rise to oppose the motion which calls for the establishment of open borders within the SADC region. Madam Speaker, while regional integration and cooperation is important, fully open borders pose a risk if handled with
Order.
While regional integration and cooperation is important, fully open borders pose serious risk if not handled with great caution. Government has a responsibility to protect its citizens and security. Madam Speaker, open borders can increase illegal trade, smuggling, and cross-border crime. Without proper control, harmful goods and illegal activities can enter the country, affecting local businesses. Madam Speaker, open borders can put pressure on local businesses and services. We already have situations where foreign nationals come into the country and quickly set up businesses. While this is not a crime, the challenge is that many local traders end up being pushed out of the market.
Order, honorable member, in accordance with Standing Order 71, can you provide evidence and statistics with regards to the businesses that you've mentioned being established and the locals being pushed out of business?
Allow me permission to lay the evidence on the table when I'm done with the debate.
You may proceed.
Madam Speaker, there are also public health concerns. Recent global experiences have shown us how quickly diseases can spread when movements are not properly handled. Many diseases do not show symptoms immediately. Madam Speaker, when borders are fully open and movement is not properly controlled, it becomes extremely difficult to detect and manage health risks. Madam Speaker, open borders can also result in capital leaving the country. Profits made by foreign-owned businesses are sent back to their home instead of us reinvesting locally. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the regional cooperation is important, but it must never come at the cost of our own people. Just like in our own homes, we welcome visitors, but we cannot allow them to rearrange the furniture while the owners are still standing. I therefore oppose this motion, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
The Honorable Member for Chawama constituency, Honorable Ropafaza.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak. Madam Speaker, my name is Ropafaza Abigail Tambara, and I am Member of Parliament for Chawama constituency. Madam Speaker, the government of Zambia cares deeply about the security and the development of Zambia as a nation. And as it seems, Madam Speaker, having open borders will be against this, Madam Speaker. It will be a clear path that will lead to self-sabotage, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, The dream of having an opening of borders appears as a very beautiful looking meal, Madam Speaker, with the potential of having a very horrible taste and impact, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a shared vision with lack of strict financial and administrative control is a recipe for disaster, which will lead to a national diarrhea, Madam Speaker. The incident...
Order. Honorable Member, diarrhea is unparliamentary language in accordance with Standing Order number 72.
Apologies, Madam Speaker. The incident that occurred in Kazungula Beach between Zambia and Botswana is a perfect example, Madam Speaker. It didn't fail because it was too close, but because there was lack of harmonized control. Madam Speaker, in addition to that, Madam Speaker, we wouldn't like the nation of Zambia, the beautiful nation of Zambia, to be a hub for criminal activities like drug smuggling, charcoal smuggling, and also human trafficking, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to provide proof of the Zambia Daily Mail in 2020. It provided that there was approximately a loss of about 60 million because of charcoal smuggling. Madam Speaker, allow me to also add, in 2023, there was unlawful entry by immigrants from the nations of DRC and Malawi. And these numbers are about 200,000 immigrants that entered the nation of Zambia, Madam Speaker. If these activities are happening in a nation that has borders, Madam Speaker, what will happen when these borders are opened, Madam Speaker? That will mean that, Madam Speaker, we are allowing lawlessness, Madam Speaker, and we are giving a free ticket to allow lawlessness to happen, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, opening borders is not trade, Madam Speaker. It is an invitation to lawlessness, Madam Speaker. We do not need open borders at all, Madam Speaker. We actually need more borders, Madam Speaker, with strict management and control, Madam Speaker. Please let us not commit industrial suicide. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Order, honorable members. I now call upon the honorable member for Mumba constituency, Honorable Abigail Njovu.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I am Abigail Njovu, the MP for Mumba constituency. Madam Speaker, let us talk about tourism. Madam Speaker, we all know that the tourism sector is being boosted by the tourists that come from other countries. Madam Speaker, allow me to give a practical example in this house. Madam Speaker, how many people have visited the Victoria Falls in 2026 January? Madam Speaker, you find that only 2% of the total population have visited the Victoria Falls for tourism. Madam Speaker, according to statistics, allow me to say in 2025 they recorded 2.3 million of tourists coming from other countries in Zambia. Madam Speaker, why should we close borders to the people that are making the Zambia GDP strong? Because us ourselves, we are unable to...
Order, honorable member, you may please pause. The point of order has been raised. The honorable member for Mumba constituency, do you have evidence to that effect?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I do have evidence.
And can you lay the evidence on the table?
I will when I'm done with my debate.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Why should we close the borders to the people that are making the GDP of Zambia to be strong? Because us Zambians, we are unable to appreciate the beauty that we have in our country. We are unable to visit these tourist places. Because why are we not doing that? And why should we close the borders for them? Madam Speaker, we really need to take that into consideration. Madam Speaker, let us talk about regional integration. Madam Speaker, no country is able to produce its needs and wants to itself. Madam Speaker, we need raw materials coming from other countries, and by this, how can we have the raw materials coming from other countries? Madam Speaker, we need to have economical ties with these countries. We need to have social ties with these countries. We need to have logistical ties with these countries, and if these ties are strengthened, that means that we'll be able to get the raw materials that we need. Madam Speaker, so that means that this will bring stability and development in our country. Madam Speaker, two countries will sit down and construct a road that brings development in our country. Madam Speaker, this shows that really this motion needs to be adopted. Indeed, the government should establish open borders with neighboring countries. Madam Speaker, thank you.
The Honorable Member for Ron Constituency, Honorable Chileshe Makasa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the good people of Ron Constituency. Madam Speaker, I represent the good people of Ron Constituency, and my name is Chileshe Makasa. Now, Madam Speaker, Zambia stands at the crossroads at its borders. Madam Speaker, we have seen that for too long our borders have been in barriers instead of bridges. Madam Speaker, we can unlock the full potential of regional trade like tourism, agriculture, not only that but also economic cooperation. Madam Speaker, this is not just about the people's movement but also how Zambia will be transformed and also how it's going to be enhanced in a hub of prosperity. Madam Speaker, boosting trade and also economic growth, reduce border delays with lower transport costs and make Zambian goods competitive. Madam Speaker, SADC frameworks already encourage tariff reduction and free movement of goods. Zambia should lead by example as well. Madam Speaker, regional integration and also diplomacy, strengthening ties with our neighboring countries, Madam Speaker, will lead to peace amongst the disputes that Zambia has. Madam Speaker, open borders will reduce Zambia's reputation as a leader of regional cooperation. Madam Speaker, this will also create job creation for the people in Petauke, Mazabuka, and also the country at large. Madam Speaker, by embracing this, Madam Speaker, we will strengthen its economy and empower citizens to fulfill its role as a gateway in Southern Africa. This is not just about moving from this, Madam Speaker, but it's about a cooperation from barriers to bridges and from potential to prosperity. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
I now call upon the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Honorable Violet Mazimba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for granting me this opportunity to speak. I speak in my capacity as Minister of Tourism. Madam Speaker, I wish to state clearly the Zambian people know that what's really going on, mostly the opposition side. Before I proceed, Madam Speaker, I heard the member of opposition saying that there were statistics of the 2026 that she stated 2% of the people in January visited the Victoria Falls. But Madam Speaker, my ministry is yet to provide. Madam Speaker, but my ministry is yet to provide the statistics for 2026. And we are yet to do that in early 2027, Madam Speaker. So I would love the opposition to give where they got the 2% statistics that they said 2% of people visited the Victoria Falls, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to proceed. I wish to state clearly that Zambia does not require open borders in order for tourism to thrive. Our tourism sector has continued to attract visitors, investment, and global attention under the existing borders and visa systems. Madam Speaker, at present, many Zambian tourism facilities, border posts, and destination management systems are still developing. Opening borders prematurely without adequate system in place, it risks overstretching of our capacity and undermining the very tourism experience we seek to promote. Madam Speaker, the argument that Zambia must open her borders in order to promote tourism is therefore misleading. We do not open borders for tourism growth. A practical example, Madam Speaker, a visitation was made a few weeks ago by an international streamer, I shall speak. Madam Speaker, he entered Zambia through normal immigration procedures without the country opening its borders. This shows that we do not need our country to open our borders for us to have tourists in our country. Madam Speaker, Zambia already receives tourists from other countries and the world at large who visit the Victoria Falls, national parks, cultural sites under the controlled and regulated entry systems. Madam Speaker, the visitors come because Zambia is an attractive, safe and welcoming place, not because of open borders. Furthermore, opening borders presents risks that could negatively affect tourism. Madam Speaker, security and immigration management challenges. Madam Speaker, increased pressure of tourists, towns and public services. Zambia tourism is built on our pristine wildlife, most notably in the Kafua region, Luangwa and Lower Zambezi National Park. Loosening border controls would increase poaching for our wildlife. It would open floodgates for wildlife traffickers. Madam Speaker, tourist key factors of destination is safety and stability. As minister responsible for their experience, I cannot support a policy that will endanger our people, the visitors and assets of the tourism that we build upon. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to end with an African proverb that says, you do not open gates wide before you could secure the fence. Let Zambia strengthen her systems, protect her tourism assets, and deliver sustainable benefits to her people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Honorable Lukundo Namonje.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Namonje Lukundo, Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry. Madam Speaker, controlled integration is already underway. Zambia is already committed to regional integration through one-stop border posts like the Chirundu border, where trade facilitation measures are sped up and legitimate commerce is maintained. Madam Speaker, we have bilateral agreements that address specific sectors and mutual benefits. These agreements are governed by international law without the involvement of multiple parties. Madam Speaker, we are an active member of the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, African Continental Free Trade Area, and also in our own capacity, also, Madam Speaker, in our own capacity as Zambia, we have the Zambia Bureau of Standards, which promotes and maintains standards in industry and commerce and facilitation of trade, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have the Zambia Development Agency, which focuses on value addition and promotes investments. Madam Speaker, we also have the Zambia Trade Policy 2018, which deepens participation in regional trade blocks, Madam Speaker, which creates jobs and develops domestic manufacturing capacity. Madam Speaker, these focus on phased tariff reduction and rules of origin, Madam Speaker. The mentioned measures strike a balance, promoting trade while protecting national interest, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my second point is protection of emerging and strategic industries. As we are all aware, Zambia is on a path of economic diversification, Madam Speaker, with growing sectors such as manufacturing, agro-processing, and mineral beneficiation, Madam Speaker. Completely open borders would expose our emerging industries to unfair competition from more established producers in neighboring countries, potentially stifling local investment and job creation. We must safeguard these sectors through smart strategic policies until they are competitive on a regional scale, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Zambia's protection of emerging industries is a calculated multi-instrument approach. The success of this policy hinges on its transparency, time-bound nature, and integration with border industrial and skills development strategies, Madam Speaker. My third point is negotiating leverage and regional agreements in Zambia. As we are aware to say, a unilateral decision to open Zambian borders would surrender our leverage in ongoing and future trade negotiations, Madam Speaker. As a top 10 global copper producer and significant cobalt holder, Zambia has a commodity leverage in regional value addition, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with us being a net electricity exporter to the region, this can be used as a strategic tool in our negotiations. Now, if we open borders, Madam Speaker, don't you think the other countries will be getting our resources without us having impact, without us benefiting from them, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, our approach is structured, reciprocal, and phased, ensuring that Zambian businesses gain equitable access to regional markets in return. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, let us build a region that is integrated, yes, but also secure, prosperous, and in control of its own destiny. I thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Matrida.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Madam Speaker. I am Matrida Hadibo, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Relations. We appreciate the motion before the House, and we understand that its intent is for good and to promote international integration and economic cooperation. However, open borders as proposed is premature. Zambia remains fully committed to regional integration under the SADC and African Free Trade Agreements. Regional cooperation must be managed, secure, and reciprocal. It is to be noted that regional integration does not require open borders. SADC itself adopts a phased and cautious approach to movement of persons, labor mobility, and liberalized borders. Zambia can maintain strong diplomatic economic ties through the SADC and African Free Trade Agreements. Controlled mobility achieves cooperation whilst safeguarding national interests. Zambia already has domesticated protocols and annexes from the African Free Trade Agreement to strengthen regional integration and economic cooperation through the statutory instrument number 92 of 2024, which sets the framework for simplified customs and border bureaucracy. As a Minister of Foreign Affairs, safeguarding national security and sovereignty is non-negotiable. Zambia already faces evolving regional challenges such as transnational crime, smuggling, trafficking, and irregular migration. Open borders without robust enforcement capacity increases the exposure to these risks. Borders allows the state to control its territory, maintain internal stability, and ensure international peace, order, and prosperity. It is our responsibility as a government to put the needs of our people before the aspirations that we have. At the end of the day, it's regionalism over idealism. As a government, our preferred approach is a gradual strategic approach. We can do this through strengthening our existing instruments such as the Simplified Trade Regimes Instrument, which is specifically tailored to help small-scale cross-border traders move goods with reduced documentation and taxes. How much more should we do? We are already trying to ensure that we promote regional integration and economic cooperation. We have bilateral travel agreements. Zambia has achieved several bilateral travel and trade agreements to enhance regional integration and economic cooperation, including key initiatives in 2025, like the bilateral air services agreement with Eswatini and improved border facilitation with DRC. These agreements focus on simplifying travel, launching direct flights, and bolstering tourism and trade with partner countries. It was mentioned by the opposition that it's their desire for us to bolster our tourism industry. We are putting strategies and agreements into place already to also push this forward. The government is aware that we need to boost our tourism, that we need to promote regional integration, that we need to promote economic cooperation. But we are not in suggestion of opening up our borders to achieve this. We are trying to achieve this through strategic and cautious approaches. Zambia should first focus on investing in border management systems, security cooperation, and domestic competitiveness before we consider opening borders when we are not nearly ready to open up our borders to our competing countries like South Africa. Zambia must protect national sovereignty of states and safeguard the national interests of its people. This House must choose responsible regionalism over idealism. Zambia supports integration, but integration that is secure, gradual, and economically balanced. For these reasons, I cannot support the motion in its current form. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order. The Honorable Government Whip, Honorable the Honorable Minister, Honorable Mercy Mwenda.
Honorable members, Madam Speaker, I greet you all and thank you for giving the countrymen and women of Zambia a voice to speak. My name is Mwenda Mesisi and I am the government whip. Madam Speaker, allow me to first and foremost remind the House that the first and fundamental duty of the government is to protect our country. Now, members of this House, with that in mind, what the opposition is trying to tell us is that we willingly weaken our duty. Now, members of this House, our response as government still remains no. The House of Intellectuals, we are not saying no simply because we do not want the regional integration, nor the trade or the tourism. We are simply saying we can attain this through different ways, through managed borders. Now, members of this House, allow me to forge ahead by simply saying one of the opposition made mention to say tourists come into our country. Now, the question is, tourists go to countries where they feel secured, where they feel safe. Now, House of Intellectuals, why have a country that is economically stable but have citizens suffering, have citizens who are not protected? Then, members of this symposium, the question is, are we really doing it for our citizens or we're only doing it for the money? Now, forging ahead, members of this House, one of the members mentioned to say we have finished materials that needs to be brought now into our country. The House of Intellectuals, in as much as no country can be independent on its own, members of this symposium, it is imperative to note that we must monitor the things that come into our country for safety purposes, members of this House. Why should we have goods coming into our country, members of this House? What if those goods have harmful drugs in them or harmful substances? Now, members of this symposium, it is illogical of the opposition to actually mention to say we can do, we have to have open borders. Now, members of this symposium, forging ahead, imagine if we were taught to say in order for one to be a good neighbor, they need to leave their house doors and windows open. House of intellectuals, one would be putting their family at risk, and that is what the opposition is exactly asking us, the government, to do, members of this symposium. House of intellectuals, we as the government are not saying regional integration is not imperative. We as the government are not saying we do not need trade, no tourism. What we are saying, members of this symposium, is we can attend this through managed borders. Now, House of intellectuals, you will agree with me that if we open our borders, we would be bringing about crimes, increased crimes. Now, House of intellectuals, it is easy for people to traffic substances. It is easy for people to traffic humans. Members of this symposium, we are doing this for the well-being of our country. Now, Madam Speaker, going ahead would bring about broken services. Madam Speaker, as government, our duty is to provide public services. And when we speak of public services, we do not only speak of public services, but quality public services. Now, members of this symposium, now, Madam Speaker, if we would bring about other people entering into our country, that would mean compromised services, because the number of members of this symposium, House, Madam Speaker, would be compromised. Now, Madam Speaker, is it logical that we tell a Zambian citizen to say we do not have Panadol today simply because a person from another country had access to it? Is it logical that we tell a 3-year-old Zambian citizen...
Honorable members.
Is it logical that we tell a 3-year-old child to not attend free education simply because another person from another country does not have access to it? Members of this symposium, talking about the revenue catastrophe, members of this house, we rely on...
Honorable member, you keep referencing the honorable members in your debate, but I'll guide you to standing order number 63, which states that you shall only speak to the speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Ma. Madam Speaker, Ma, moving ahead to revenue catastrophe. Madam Speaker, moving on to revenue catastrophe. Madam Speaker, you will agree with me that Zambia is a developing country, and by virtue of it developing, it relies on things like custom duty, taxes, which we get on the borders. Now, members of this symposium, if we get rid of these revenues, members of this symposium, where are we getting the money? Because Zambia is just developing, members of this house.
Honorable member.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
I believe I have guided you with regards to standing order number 63. You shall not reference the honorable members in your debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Apologies. Now, Madam Speaker, forging ahead, my next point is talking about health. Madam Speaker, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. Now, Madam Speaker, if we have a nation where people are sick simply because we've let our borders to be open, we, Madam Speaker, are encouraging that even people that are sick can enter into our country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you notice to say borders are where people get controls. The time that we had COVID-19, Madam Speaker, people got checked on borders, Madam Speaker. And later on, if one was found sick, they would be returned to their country. Now, if we have open borders, Madam Speaker, are we going to say our countrymen and women should suffer simply because we want our country to be open? That is illogical, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, forging ahead to my point, which is our policy action, as the government, Madam Speaker, we plead with the opposition that we use technology instead, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we can work hand in hand as SADC region to actually put up better system for borders that can work faster, safer in terms of checking on the travelers and government. And in conclusion, Madam Speaker, allow me to simply say we as government will not trade our people's safety as a slogan. Madam Speaker, we represent our people, and the borders are a representation that we protect their cities, we protect our citizens. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we assure you that this government, Madam Speaker, believes in being a good neighbor. But before we can actually live and be a good neighbor, we believe in being a good guardian. With that being said, I, Mwenda Mesisi, the government whip, hereby submit.
Order. The Honorable Member for Chilaombe constituency, Ms. Hope Soko, to wind up debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable members, esteemed opponents, and fellow citizens, today we have heard passionate arguments on both sides of a defining issue for our nation and region, Africa. But as we reflect on what Africa is, our own motherland, as our national anthem so proudly declares, we must ask ourselves, do we want to remain behind invisible walls or build bridges that honor our shared destiny? That's a question. Open borders with our neighbors, especially under SADC and the African continent at large, are not just an economic policy. They are a statement of faith in our collective future, Madam Speaker. We have heard from the opposition concerns about challenges such as smuggling of goods and also illegal trades. But, Madam Speaker, let us focus on what we gain when we open our hearts and our frontiers. Open borders will deepen regional integration, reduce bureaucratic barriers, and streamline trade processes, benefits that our own Chamber of Commerce says will boost Zambian exports and competitive across Africa. Madam Speaker.
Honorable Member, order. Be guided that you are winding up debate and not reintroducing debate.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, instead, let us work boldly towards a future where Zambia is not only at peace with its neighbors, but partners with them in development and shared prosperity. For unity, for progress, for the prosperity of every Zambian citizen and every African child, I therefore, speaking on behalf of Zambia and Africa at large, urge this House to vote in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Honorable members, I put the question. The question is that this House urges the government to establish open borders with neighboring countries within the SADC region to promote regional integration, trade, tourism, and economic cooperation. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. The next motion, the Honorable Member for Livingston, Honorable Matilda Chitenga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I beg to move the motion that this House urges the government to increase the budget allocation in the 2027 national budget so as to increase or to enhance productivity and investment. Thank you.
Is the motion seconded? Seconded by the Honorable Member for Chilanga, Ms. Miola Mulenga. The question is that this House urges the government to increase the budget allocation to the agricultural sector in the 2027 national budget to enhance productivity and attract investment. Any debate? The Honorable Member for Livingston, Honorable Matilda Chitenga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this profound opportunity as I represent the people of Livingstone and the people of Zambia at large. We believe that agriculture is the backbone of Zambia's economy. Madam Speaker, the agriculture sector is not just another sector, but a sector that contributes 60%, but a sector that contributes to Zambia's economy. I believe that the agriculture sector is the foundation of national survival, Madam Speaker. It employs over 60% of Zambia's population. This means that the agriculture sector contributes between 18 and 20% towards the gross development product, which is which makes it the second largest contributor towards the GDP, Madam Speaker. This House, Madam Speaker, this House acknowledges the positive shift by the government. Since 2022, there has been a positive shift by the government towards the agriculture sector. If you reckon with me, Madam Speaker, the increase in the agriculture sector began in the year 2022 when the government increased the budget allocation from 7.3 billion kwacha to about, Madam Speaker, the government increased the budget allocation of in the agriculture sector from 11 billion in 2023 to 13.8 billion in 2024, and later on to 15.5 billion in the 2026 national budget. However, despite this shift, Madam Speaker, the government, there's still a gap in the agriculture sector. This means that the government needs to highly invest in this particular sector because it is a backbone of this economy. Yes, the agriculture sector highly contributes to the nation's GDP. Madam Speaker, increasing the budget allocation to this agriculture sector will actually help the country in terms of diversity. For so long as a country we've talked about diversification, but then how do we foster a sense of diversification when the sector is underfunded, Madam Speaker? Therefore, I'm urging the government to increase the budget allocation towards the 2027 national budget, which is highly going to help the sectors that are lagging, the sectoral sectors that are lagging behind the agriculture sector. To mention, we've got the irrigation. If you reckon with me, Madam Speaker, the recent years, Zambia has had struggled with what you call droughts coupled with erratic rainfall in some parts of the country, from southern province, some parts of western province, and some parts of eastern province. But however, how do we fight this challenge that might affect the country in the years to come? It's the more reason why we, the opposition, are urging the government to highly fund. It's the more reason why we're urging the government to allocate more funds towards the agriculture sector in order to ensure a sense of security, because national security is food security, Madam Speaker. And we refuse to starve a sector that feeds the nation, a sector that breathes life into other sectors, Madam Speaker, a sector that builds the backward and the forward linkage, Madam Speaker, because it is from agriculture that industrialization comes about. It is from agriculture that sectors such as the manufacturing are birthed, Madam Speaker. It is from agriculture that jobs are created among young people and the women. And it is through agriculture, if we increase the agriculture funding, it's going to help most of these women, most of these smallholder farmers to really to come up with so much capital so that they can invest in irrigation, so that they can invest in machinery, so that they can invest in so many things that are going to help promote the sector. I believe that diversification is not just about growing. Diversification is actually broadening the ways of improving the economy, Madam Speaker. And broadening the economy, when the economy is broadened, it means that we're going to promote sustainability. It means that our children's children will still find a better Zambia in the now and the years to come, Madam Speaker. It is from... Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I beg to move.
Order. Does the seconder wish to speak now or later? You may proceed.
Thank you very much once again, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to represent the lovely people of Chilanga constituency. Madam Speaker, Zambia cannot talk about economic growth while the sector that feeds the entire nation is starving. Let us begin with the facts. According to the 2025 National Budget Book Report published by the Ministry of Finance, the government allocated 15.4 billion to the agriculture, fisheries and livestock sector. And this is only representing 7.1% of the 217.1 billion kwacha in the national budget. This allocation was of course an increase from the 13.8 billion kwacha in 2024. However, Madam Speaker, even with that increase, the government still had to draw from the emergency supplementary funds as reported in the 2024 mid-year budget review, because the initial agriculture allocation was not sufficient enough to address the drought issues, to address input shortages and food insecurity challenges that were faced in that year. Madam Speaker, this tells us something very simple, that even the government knows that the agriculture sector needs more. And with the realities on the ground, it is important that we understand, it is clear that an allocation of 7% is not keeping up with Zambia's agricultural demand. The motion calls for an increase in the funding for agriculture sector, not as a luxury, but as a necessity, Madam Speaker. Agriculture is not just a line item, but it is our food security. It is our source of employment, and even for our rural incomes, and a major part of our GDP. Madam Speaker, Zambia has over 1.5 million small-scale farmers, and these farmers produce over 80% of our national food supply. Yet they operate with unreliable water supply, little to no irrigation support, and late deliveries of inputs. These are not theoretical problems, Madam Speaker. These are challenges that are being faced by the people of Chilanga constituency and across the country. Madam Speaker, no matter how strong policies are, if farmers do not have irrigation systems that are protecting them against droughts, if they do not have functioning extension services that are teaching them modern methods, that is giving them access to technology and mechanization, then productivity is going to remain stagnant. Exports are going to lag, and food prices will continue to rise. Madam Speaker, an increment in allocation in the 2027 national budget would do great things for this economy. And we have proof of that through the World Bank and showing us countries that have invested heavily in the agriculture sector, and they have shown results. Madam Speaker, we have Ethiopia, who invested 10 to 12% of its budget in the agriculture and have seen steady growth in agriculture outputs. Kenya, who by focusing on irrigation and extension significantly increased maize yields within a few years. Rwanda boosted agriculture financing and has become Africa's largest, fastest growing economy, agriculture economy. Madam Speaker, why not Zambia?
The statistics you are giving with regards to other countries like Rwanda, do you have the documents present in the House today?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
And can you lay the evidence on the table?
Yes, Madam Speaker. May I lay them after my debate?
You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, we have examples from these countries, and why not Zambia? We have the land, we have the farmers, and we have the potential. What is lacking is funding priority. Madam Speaker, the question that many may fear today is where the money will come from. But we cannot bring solutions to the table without implementation strategies. And the clear strategy for this is proper prioritization. We are not asking for more money, but we are asking for better prioritization. Agriculture is not an expense, but it is an investment with clear and measurable returns, such as boosted productivity, job creation, reduced food imports, and stabilized prices. Madam Speaker, if we want real sustainable economic growth, if we want resilience against the climate shock, if we want farmers to move from just survival to success, then it is very important that agriculture should be funded like the priority it is. This motion is not wishful, it is necessary, it is achievable, and it is economically sound. And that is why today, Madam Speaker, I urge members of this House to support this motion.
The Honorable Member for Chirundu Constituency, Honorable Doris Mwale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Chirundu a voice in this august House. Madam Speaker, I rise as a representative of the people of Chirundu, a farming constituency that understands both the potential and the pressures that are within the agriculture sector. Madam Speaker, however, these challenges are not just unique to Chirundu constituency, but they reflect the realities that farmers across Zambia are facing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, agriculture remains central to livelihood, food security, and economic stability. Yet, despite its importance, limited and inconsistent funding, Madam Speaker, continue to constrain productivity, particularly amongst small-scale farmers, Madam Speaker, and climate-vulnerable farmers. Madam Speaker, this matters because when productivity remains low, effects extend far beyond the farm. Madam Speaker, supply becomes unstable, prices rise, dependency on imports increases. Madam Speaker, these
Madam Speaker, this outfit affects the houses, the government, and also the markets. Madam Speaker, as the opposition, we believe and we are saying that addressing these challenges require deliberate investment. Extended farming practices can unlock the productivity in our lands. Madam Speaker, while farming constituencies such as the demonstrate the value of reliable water supply and infrastructure, these needs cut across, Madam Speaker, provinces and agroecological regions. Madam Speaker, agriculture is not merely a sector of the economy, but it is the pillar of the foundation of resilience. Madam Speaker, when funding is aligned with productivity and investment outcomes, the outcome, Madam Speaker, it strengthens food security and support industry, promotes inclusive growth. Madam Speaker, the opposition, we are saying that this House must therefore act with purpose. Act with the heart of the people of Zambia. Act with the heart that sees that the generation of Zambia, Madam Speaker, depends on this motion today. Madam Speaker, we are saying that productivity, when productive agriculture sector, when you have a productive agriculture, it will benefit the whole house. So, Madam Speaker, we urge the government to support this motion because also our generation to come will benefit because of this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kampinsa Constituency, Honorable Lillian Mwansa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity given to the people of Kampinsa to contribute on a national issue such as this. Madam Speaker, I would like to proceed with a fact from the Ministry of Agriculture to state that agriculture has played a role in supporting industries by the production of required raw materials. Madam Speaker, let's mark the word raw materials. Madam Speaker, firstly, Zambia, or rather the government resources, are limited. Is that investing in agriculture, its spending means cutting funds from healthcare services such as other services such as the education sector and also the infrastructure sector. Madam Speaker, which will also affect other sectors such as the social welfare sector. Madam Speaker, these sectors which I've mentioned are the ones which on record places that these are directly able to shape human capital and also long-standing national growth. Madam Speaker, a report by the PwC rebalancing the growth which for Zambia national budget on page 40 and page 41, Madam Speaker, they discuss that, Madam Speaker, that agriculture is being on the declining basis. In that, Madam Speaker, agriculture, in investing in agriculture, it is as suitable as maintaining to keep money, Madam Speaker. But in that, Madam Speaker, these monies have been on record.
Honorable Member, a point of order has been raised. Order, honorable members, in accordance with Standing Orders number 64, a member shall not read but make reference to copious notes. Honorable member, you are out of order. May you please proceed.
Much guided. Madam Speaker, we were on the issue of the other sectors of healthy, social welfare and also education as for infrastructure-wise. Madam Speaker, we had a discussion about tourism. Agriculture, on it being a record that it's declining basis, it won't attract any tourists, neither will it attract any investors. But as considering other growing sectors such as the technology sector and also the infrastructure sectors, Madam Speaker, will help in boosting the country's GDP. Madam Speaker, secondly, agriculture contributes a declining share, as Ella alluded to, Madam Speaker, is that as I was about to quote the report which was released, and Madam Speaker, allow me to glance on the report which I quote on page 40, which states that as agriculture as one of the key contributors to the country's GDP, the agricultural sector's GDP contribution has been on a decline since 2020, reducing by an average of 20% each year, Madam Speaker. Each year, Madam Speaker, even in 2027, Madam Speaker, it will decrease, and these monies which are supposed to go to sectors such as education, getting our children educated, and Madam Speaker, contributing positively to the GDP, will be put into wastage. Madam Speaker, secondly, agriculture contributes, or rather investing in more public money investing in such a sector, Madam Speaker, which is a very low productive sector, does not guarantee proportional economic returns, especially when sectors as this is declining, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, apart from that, let me simply put it into a list, as earlier alluded to by the mover of this motion, is that Zambia has been continuously contributing to the funds of the agriculture, which currently stands at 15.4 billion, Madam Speaker, which is enough to sustain and for us to leave space to invest, Madam Speaker, in other sectors. Apart from that, Madam Speaker, we have put as government, we have put mechanisms in place which are able to sustain our livelihood. And apart from that, Madam Speaker, we encourage this motion to be withdrawn, as we should consider investing in other sectors which would turn the raw materials into finished materials, Madam Speaker. With these few but remarkable points, I submit.
The Honorable Member for Chajiza Constituency, Honorable Ethel Piri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for affording the people of Chajiza an opportunity in this August House. Madam Speaker, the House must not be deceived by the illusion that more money equals more productivity. Agriculture is indeed vital, but the backbone of our economy must be strengthened with efficiency and not weighed down with bloated budgets. Madam Speaker, evidence shows that from the International Finance Corporation, Zambia could unlock $21 billion in private investments and 300,000 jobs by 2030 if reforms in agriculture are taken. Madam Speaker, investors are not waiting for bigger budgets. What investors want are clear policies, secure land rights, and functioning markets. This is why, Madam Speaker, as government in 2022 acknowledge that the opposition praised us for that. In the 2022 to 2026 National Strategic Plan, the government of Zambia launched a strategic plan focusing on mechanization, climate-smart agriculture, and access to markets. This will in turn bring investments in our country. Madam Speaker, the Zambia Development Agency, in addition to this, already provides tax incentives and industrial clusters. What deters investment is unpredictability in policy and not bigger budget size. If we truly want growth, we should focus on reform and not inflating the system with bigger budgets. Madam Speaker, subsidies like the Farmers Input Support System over the years have distorted markets, have made smallholder farmers dependent, and have also distorted agri-corporate business. Madam Speaker, IMF reports and civil society reports shows that despite repeated allocation, productivity still remains stagnant. This is why, as government, again, Madam Speaker, we went on to reform FISIP, shifting it from its blanket subsidies to smarter targeting. Madam Speaker, allow me to praise this, that in the 2024-2025 budget, in the 2024-2025 farming season, our country recorded a 3.7 million tons of maize.
The Honorable Members, there are too much movement in the House. The Honorable Member, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, we had a bumper maize harvest of 3.7 million tons over the 2024-2025 farming season. This shows that reforms really deliver results compared to budget size. Madam Speaker, in addition to that, Zambia, in cooperation with the German government, we are coming up with the Comprehensive Agriculture Transformation Support Program, which will focus on mechanization and efficiency. Madam Speaker, this will in turn bring investment in our country. Throwing money at agriculture is like watering a field with a leaking bucket. It looks busy, but the crops still remain thirsty. Madam Speaker, this motion is a populist illusion. What it means to be in good government, it means that we need to spend wisely and not spend more. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All the honorable members, the honorable member for Kafiwe constituency, Honorable Catherine Nkoma.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to represent the people of Kafiwe constituency in this August House. Madam Speaker, agriculture employs about 70% of the Zambia's labor force, Madam Speaker. Yet the underfunding, Madam Speaker, limits productivity, irrigation, mechanization, and value addition. Madam Speaker, agriculture plays an important role in the Zambian economy as it contributes about 20% of the GDP of our country, Madam Speaker. Therefore, if the funds are increased, Madam Speaker, in agriculture, they will enable to invest value addition for our agriculture products, Madam Speaker, as they will promote agro-processing industries, Madam Speaker, to be able to process raw materials, Madam Speaker, into high-value products that can be exported at higher prices, Madam Speaker, therefore generating higher incomes for our Zambian farmers, Madam Speaker, and also the country at large. Madam Speaker, Zambia has about 1.6 million smallholder farmers, Madam Speaker, who are extremely vulnerable to climate shocks, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, statistics have also shown that about 78% of the Zambian people are poor and they live in rural areas compared to the 28% of people that live in urban areas, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, because of this, the smallholder farmers lack financial services that can be able to equip them with the right equipment such as irrigation system, Madam Speaker, that will enable them to mitigate the climate shocks for our country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would also like to remind the House, Madam Speaker, that Zambia was declared national disaster in 2024, Madam Speaker, because we were faced with extreme climate change, Madam Speaker, and drought, Madam Speaker. This drought, Madam Speaker, approximately destroyed about 1 million hectares of maize, Madam Speaker, affecting the prices of milling meal, leaving the countries that could not afford, Madam Speaker, vulnerable and food insecure, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if these funds are increased, Madam Speaker, they will enable smallholder farmers to have access to irrigation systems, Madam Speaker, which will reduce the reliance on rain-fed agriculture, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member, a point of order has been raised. The honorable member is not reading. I believe that the standing orders number, all the honorable members, standing orders number 63 states that an honorable member may make reference to copious notes and may glance. And I believe that the honorable member from opposition gave the time limit for glancing. You may proceed, Honorable
Thank you,
Member.
Madam Speaker. I beg to proceed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to also outline the budget allocation for agriculture in 2025, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, agriculture received about 15 billion to agriculture, of which 9 billion was allocated to the FISIP and about 2 billion was allocated to the strategic food reserves, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, despite acknowledging that FISIP is aimed at boosting the productivity for our smallholder farmers, Madam Speaker. The FISIP, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, it mostly promotes monoculture, Madam Speaker, such as maize, Madam Speaker. Hence, Madam Speaker, the country is left food insecure because we lack crop diversification, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the funds are increased, Madam Speaker, for the funds, they are increased for the 2027 budget, Madam Speaker, they will enable us to allocate more resources into the strategic food reserves, Madam Speaker, that help to secure the food security of our nation when we experience shortages, Madam Speaker, and climate shocks, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, also the food reserve, Madam Speaker, will also help us to will also help the government to fund, Madam Speaker, the farmers on time and receive their resources on time, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with these very few points, Madam Speaker, I submit. Thanks.
The Honorable Member for Wacha Constituency, Honorable Jane Musako. All the honorable members.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for according the people of Wacha constituency an opportunity to debate in this House. Madam Speaker, the agriculture sector is already allocated approximately 15.4 billion. Through this funding, Madam Speaker, government has supported 1 million farmers under the Farmer Input Support Program, established mechanization service centers and upgraded irrigation schemes. These are the very measures, Madam Speaker, that enhance productivity and attract investments. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the opposition is asking for something that the government is already doing. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the challenge in agriculture is not just into the amount of money, but how the funds are being used. That is why the government has strengthened the e-voucher system, increased extension services, and promoted the climate smart farming. Increasing the budget without addressing utilization would only mean simply increasing expenditure without improving results. Madam Speaker, this motion does not explain where the additional funds will come from. Any increase between 15.4 billion would mean diverting resources from sectors such as the health sector, education sector, debt servicing, at a time when the country is already undergoing economic pressure. Madam Speaker, progress is not measured by how much you spend it, but by how wisely we spend it. And this government has invested strategically in irrigation, mechanization, and farmer support. Madam Speaker, with these few points said, I submit.
All the honorable members. The Honorable Member for Kembe Constituency, Honorable Rosaria Simasundu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Rosaria Etambui Simsandu, Member of Parliament for Kembe Constituency. Madam Speaker, the agricultural sector is a high priority sector for the Zambian people. Madam Speaker, this is because it is a key driver in economic transformation and job creation for the Zambian people as stated in the 8th National Development Plan of Zambia. Madam Speaker, one of the commitments that has been stated in the 8th National Development Plan is the elimination of malnutrition, and this calls for the intervention through various frameworks such as the strengthening institutional framework for coordination and national nutrition and sustainable food. Madam Speaker, this shows us how crucial the agricultural sector is in ensuring food security and nutrition, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, food security entails good health outcomes, and good health outcomes entail improved learning outcomes as well as improving the educational system. So, Madam Speaker, increasing the agricultural budget does not only improve agriculture, but it also improves the health sector and education sector. Madam Speaker, we acknowledge that agriculture suffers from climate shocks and as well as contributes to them. But Madam Speaker, increasing the budget allocation ensures that we become more climate resilient as a nation. This means that we will be able to fund the necessary technology, Madam Speaker, required to ensure this climate resilience is made possible. Madam Speaker, a good example of such technology is hydroponics, which is practically farming without soil, Madam Speaker. And so this means that even when the country experiences drought, we will still be able to provide the necessary food that's required because of the technology that the country has, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, improving the technology through this budget increment would mean that sectors such as renewable energy are also enhanced, in that we will be able to utilize proper technology, Madam Speaker, to produce the necessary biogas that is required. Also, Madam Speaker, in terms of compost and biofertilizer, this will mean that, Madam Speaker, we are transitioning towards a secular economy as a nation. Madam Speaker, the opposition spoke about wise spending, Madam Speaker. The government rather, Madam Speaker, spoke about wise spending.
Order, honorable members.
Madam Speaker, in the 8th National Development Plan, there is a framework that has been set to track progress towards attaining the set goals that have been set by the country. Madam Speaker, the monitoring and evaluation states that it will be undertaken at national, provincial, district, and ward levels, Madam Speaker. So, wise spending should not be an issue for the country if this monitoring and evaluation framework is being properly handled, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this very framework states that it will take into account inputs, outputs, outcomes, and the impacts. So, Madam Speaker, ensuring that there is an increment in budget allocation for the agricultural sector in the 2027 budget is very necessary. It is not in any way sacrificing any sector. And, Madam Speaker, increasing the allocation, Madam Speaker, ensures that the current generation, Madam Speaker, the current generation's needs are met, Madam Speaker, and also future generation needs are met without any compromise. With that, Madam Speaker, I urge this House to ensure that there is an increment in the budget allocation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order. The Honorable Member for Mwembeshi Constituency, Honorable Karen Hawowa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Mwembeshi constituency a voice in this August House. My name is Karen Hawowa, MP for Mwembeshi constituency. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion which urges the government to increase budgetary allocation to the agricultural sector in 2027 national budgets. Madam Speaker, this House fully acknowledges and appreciates the efforts the government has already made in supporting agriculture. These efforts demonstrate commitments and national responsibilities. However, as a nation, we must also recognize that emerging challenges require us to do more. Remember, agriculture still remains the backbone of our economy. It supports the livelihoods of the Zambian people and also contributes to the employment of the Zambian people. Madam Speaker, you do realize that our country is mostly based on white-collar jobs. But if we were to divert the energy to farming or agriculture, it will improve our country. Madam Speaker, the more young people invest in agriculture, the stable our country's income will be. Madam Speaker,
Climate change has introduced unpredictable weather patterns which places farmers at a great risk. In such circumstances, increased budgetary allocations becomes essential. Protecting and safeguarding national food security. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, this increase will also strengthen mechanization, which includes obviously the tractors, also the harvesters, the planters. If we look at our farmers right now in all provinces, we'll realize that most people don't have these planters, they don't have these machines. But if we invest in agriculture, we are going to improve our sector, our agriculture sector. This will allow improvement in farming methods, allowing agriculture to move more from subsistence to sustainable growth. Increased government commitment, and also it signals a signal to private investment. When the state leads, the private sector will also follow. Madam Speaker.
Honorable Member, a point of order has been raised. Honorable Member, that is not for you to determine. But Honorable Member, indeed Standing Order number 64 states that a member shall not read but make reference to copious notes and glance. You are out of order. May you please proceed with that portion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I earlier stated, for food security, productivity and investment, I therefore strongly urge this House to follow through to this motion I submit.
Honorable members, the Honorable Member from Pongwe constituency, Honorable Mwita Kaliwanda. Order.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for according a voice to the people of Mpongwe constituency. My name is Mwita Kaliwanda, MP for Mpongwe constituency. Madam Speaker, I rise today with a heavy but very determined heart. Why? Because this motion is not just theory. It is life. It is the lived realities of the Zambian people, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, agriculture sustains over 70% of the rural families in Zambia, Madam Speaker. Not only for income, but also for daily survival. Madam Speaker, this sector, Madam Speaker, when it performs well, the country eats well, and the economy stabilizes, Madam Speaker. And yet, Madam Speaker, the 2025-2026 national budget allocated less than 10% to this sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, many farmers are losing up to 40% of their yields, Madam Speaker. Many of our farmers rely on rain-fed agriculture, which is becoming unreliable due to climate change, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, extension officers are too few, Madam Speaker. You find that one officer is managing up to 700 farmers in a ward, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker,
Honorable Member, do you have evidence and statistics and the documents where you got those statistics that show that indeed only one officer manages 700 people?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Can you lay the evidence on the table?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, modern technology like soil testing, irrigation machinery and storage facilities are still a dream to small-scale farmers, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are a country that eats from the soil, and we must invest in the soil, Madam Speaker. This is a sector, Madam Speaker, that gives more than it receives, Madam Speaker. This is why, Madam Speaker, an increase to this sector is not charity or an expense, but it is a higher return investment to this nation.
Order.
Madam Speaker, if we do not
increase funding to this sector, we are not only failing as my constituency in Pongwe, but we are failing as a nation, Madam Speaker. We are failing our nation. We are failing our farmers, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, evidence from the Indaba Agriculture Policy Research Institute states that every quarter invested in agriculture returns about 4 to 7 quarters to the economy. It also states that irrigation alone can double yields for small-scale farmers. And also, Madam Speaker, modern farming technology can increase productivity up to 300%, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the 2023-2024 drought affected over 1 million households nationwide. Many farmers watch their entire lives dry up, not because they are lazy or unskilled, but because they depend on rainfall. Madam Speaker, therefore, if we allocate more funding, Madam Speaker, to this sector, we are going to have more dams and small holder irrigation schemes, solar and borehole schemes that will help in the farming, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are protecting farmers from hunger and poverty, and also uncertainty. And we see exponential income returns. If we do this, Madam Speaker, we give more funding, we will see exponential increase. We will have increased exports, improved rural income, and a stronger kwacha, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Order. The Honorable Member for Choma Constituency, Honorable Rita Mwamba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. I'll just start by saying good governance is not about spending more. It is about spending better. And this House must recognize that productivity comes from efficiency, not merely increase in allocations. The government acknowledges that the agricultural sector is one of Zambia's major economic income. One of, not the major, one of. We have ministries like the mining sector, energy sector, tourism sector, which brings in more money than the agricultural sector. So why would investing into the agricultural sector be a good move for the government, knowing that the government has more things to spend on? The government just spend money on meals in schools. So why, knowing that this is an investment, right? And education is an investment, so the government spend money into this. How do we know that the government will benefit by spending into the agricultural sector? Knowing, and most of the speakers from the opposition, Madam Speaker, mentioned how...
Order. They are not speakers.
Opposition.
They are debaters and they are honorable members.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, just like most of the honorable members from the opposition stated that farmers have been losing crops and the government has been spending. So what proves or guarantees that if the government spends more, the crops will die? What proves or guarantees that if the government spends more, the weather will change? Because we know Zambia's climate system changes and we never predict it. 2023 to 2024, we had drought. The government spent almost 108 million to provide to the farmers. So why would we allocate more knowing that we're still going to spend more, knowing the Zambia's climate system? And not to forget, Zambia was just removed from debt default. So why would we spend more knowing that the budget is also used to pay back debt, also used in other ministries? Why would the government spend more money into the agricultural sector only? Would that be fair? If we spend into agriculture, we also have to spend into other ministries. So let the opposition keep that in mind. And Madam Speaker, before allocating more money, we clearly need proper management. Money is invested into different ministries and we don't know where the allocations go. So the government is working on that. Before spending money, we must understand that corruption exists. We must understand that funds are being misused. Why would we spend more money knowing that there are people that are so corrupt that they will use those funds? It doesn't prove anything.
Honorable member, please speak. Order, honorable members. Honorable member, you may proceed. You are very much protected. Order, honorable members. Order.
You may proceed, Honorable.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 2024, we had the same problem, where farming inputs worth 25.7 million for the 2024 to 2025 budget was still undelivered until August 2025. So why would we allocate more knowing that funds are still being misused in this government or in Zambia? So the government is working on fixing that and not just spending money without knowing where the money is going. With those points, I raise my case. Thank you.
Order, honorable members. The honorable leader of opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Josiana Doff, the leader of opposition, and I represent the good people of Kapirimposhi. Madam Speaker, the cob of maize stands strong on the coat of arms, representing, Madam Speaker, the national symbol, representing our identity as a nation, Madam Speaker, that as representing the nation, Madam Speaker, that is unbreakable, and it represents the tie that we have with the soil, Madam Speaker. We are a people born of the soil, Madam Speaker. We are a people sustained and nurtured by the soil. Yet I am surprised, Madam Speaker, that we are here today debating on whether we should invest in the very soil that nurtures and sustains us, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, investing in agriculture is a commitment not only to the economy.
Honorable member, order. Relax. You are very much protected. Please speak to us and do not scream.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This, Madam Speaker, is because I am burdened by the fact that we are debating on this, Madam Speaker. This whole house, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members.
This whole house, Madam Speaker, should be in agreement, Madam Speaker. But the fact that we have opposers of this motion makes me excited and want to speak faster, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, investing in the agriculture, Madam Speaker, is not only investing in the economy, but in the very essence of who we are as a nation, Madam Speaker. As I earlier stated, on the coat of arms, there is a symbol of the cob of maize, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the issue of prioritizing the agriculture sector and stating that that is leaving out the other sectors, Madam Speaker, we as the opposition state, Madam Speaker, that investing in agriculture is investing in education. It is investing in healthcare, Madam Speaker. Because, Madam Speaker, a well-fed child, Madam Speaker, is a healthy child, Madam Speaker. A well-fed child, Madam Speaker, is a child that will do well in school, Madam Speaker. I have evidence, Madam Speaker. A report by UNESCO shows that 20% of children who are malnourished not only suffer from marasmus and kwashiorkor, that are health diseases, but they also, Madam Speaker, have cognitive disorders and do not pay attention in class, Madam Speaker. They also do not make it. To secondary school, Madam Speaker. That indeed shows that investing in agriculture, Madam Speaker, that shows that investing in agriculture is investing in not only our children, but in the future of Zambia, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is a sad sight to see government vehemently oppose this motion. And Madam Speaker, the honorable members from my right stated that the agriculture sector is failing and that investing in the agriculture sector would be a loss on the government side. Madam Speaker, do we abandon our children when our children are performing badly in school? No, Madam Speaker, we invest more in them. Madam Speaker, we take them to extra lessons, and so if the agriculture sector is performing badly, it is the government that has to invest more and make sure that it is nurtured and make sure that the agriculture sector performs as it should, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member, in accordance to Standing Order number 72 on unparliamentary language, your tone, do not scream to the honorable members. Relax, honorable member. You are very much protected.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will try my level best to control this excitement to make sure that this motion passes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the agriculture is failing, then let us invest more and not less, Madam Speaker. As Zambians, we do not give up on our children, so let us not give up on our land. I therefore urge this House to support this motion. Support Zambia's soil, support the future of Zambia, the children of Zambia, and the heritage that we leave to our children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All the honorable members. All the honorable members. I am well aware that when we are speaking, we speak with passion because each of us is here to represent the good people of Zambia. So as you speak, honorable members, mind your tone, but also feel free to speak. You are very much protected. It is your right. The Honorable Minister of Green Economy, Honorable Sifuniso Mwelwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for according me this opportunity to speak. Well, my name is Sifuniso Miriamwela, and I'm the Minister of Green Economy and Environment. While increasing agriculture funding, yes, it's very important because it boosts productivity. But my main concern is about sustainability and misallocation, members of it. Madam Speaker, increased agriculture funding might accelerate environmental and biodiversity loss. Madam Speaker, while this motion speaks to present that agriculture expansion is the only thing that can actually boost this country, Madam Speaker, I'm concerned about its sustainability. Madam Speaker, it ignores severe environmental costs. It is observed that according to the United Nations program, Madam Speaker, agriculture is a leading driver to biodiversity loss, threatening 24,000 of 28,000 species facing extinction, Madam Speaker, and also accounting to terrestrial biodiversity loss, Madam Speaker, and also expanding funding in agriculture without strict environmental limits accelerate and also encourages land clearing, monocropping, and also intensive irrigation, Madam Speaker. In trying to feed the world today, Madam Speaker, yes, because we're trying to chase short-term food security. But, Madam Speaker, this policy risks destroying the very ecosystem that makes it very possible for tomorrow to be able to make production very possible tomorrow. Madam Speaker, as a Minister of Green Economy and Environment, I am not in support of increasing this funding because it worsens climate vulnerability, members of the House. Madam Speaker, secondly, increasing agricultural funding does not guarantee improved productivity, or even economic growth, Madam Speaker. Especially looking at the past funding that it failed to deliver, members of the House. According to the study also related to the international budget partnership, it shows that spending on the agriculture, the government did that substantially, but the sector's contribution to GDP still declined over time, and real productivity has been minimal. Between 2017 and 2021, it has been evident that agriculture has contributed about 0.1% to the country's real GDP growth, Madam Speaker, even after increasing funding. In conclusion, I would like to say that it's not about how much we spend, but it is how well we spend. And we should shift from quantity to quality. We should shift from quantity to quality. The goal is not about more productivity. The goal is about nutritional security. The goal is about ecological balance. And the goal is about sustainable livelihood. Madam Speaker, thank you.
All the honorable members, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Mishri Utakala.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Nijal Sakala, Honorable Minister of Agriculture. I would like and rise to contribute to the motion which urges an increase in agriculture funding for 2027. While the motion's intent is commendable, the motion is premature, vague, physically questionable.
Honorable Member, order. Order. In accordance with Standing Orders number 72, vague is unparliamentary language. May you please withdraw that statement and apologize to the Honorable House.
I apologize to the Honorable House.
You may proceed.
Firstly, Madam Speaker, let us acknowledge reality. The 2026 budget already allocated a historical commitment of 15.54 billion kwacha to agriculture. That is 160% higher than just a few years ago. This is not weak support, it is unprecedented investment. Secondly, Madam Speaker, this investment is already yielding measurable high return results. Let us look at the data. We achieved a 3.7 million metric ton maize harvest. This is a 24% increase which directly stems from the 9.15 billion kwacha, FISIP and e-voucher rollouts. We have moved from being a net importer to being a net exporter of fertilizer, which directly results from 2.1 billion strategic food reserve policies and incentives for local production. Over 8,000 farmers have accessed affordable loans through our over 700 million kwacha Sustainable Agriculture Finance Facility. We are attracting investment with the current budget. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, we must confront the mathematics of fiscal responsibility. Our national budget is not infinite. We are already spending 52 million kwacha annually just to service domestic debt interest. To increase agriculture further, we must ask, from which ministry do we cut? The 33 billion from free education, which is supporting over 2.3 million children in schools, or from the 26.2 billion kwacha for health, which is helping restock our clinics, or from the 14.5 billion kwacha, which is helping build our roads, which are taking these same produces to the market, Madam Speaker. A mere 10% increase means 1.55 billion kwacha, and this has to be surgically cut from other national priorities. Madam Speaker, therefore, our stance as government is clear. We are not opposing investment, we are leading investment. We are opposing this motion which demands more money without stating the amount, the source, or the specific measurable outcomes. Our 2026 allocation is sufficient and strategic. Let us first execute and fully yield from this allocated funds, Madam Speaker, and our goal is 10 million metric ton of maize. Once that is achieved, Madam Speaker, only then and only then should we talk about increase in allocation. Without full execution, we cannot start giving assumptions on how things should go. First we execute and then we yield what we execute, Madam Speaker. First we execute and yield what we invest, Madam Speaker. We urge this House to reject this well-meaning motion but questionable and premature motion and stand with the government on clear investment, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Her Honor, the Vice President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Blessing Banda. I'm leader of government business in this House. Madam Speaker, we as a government rise with deep respect for the importance of agriculture, but with equal conviction that this motion, while well-intentioned, risks leading us down wrong path. Madam Speaker, the government does not oppose agriculture. We defend it. We do not reject investments. We insist that investment must be effective. Madam Speaker, we are well aware as a government that agriculture is the backbone of this nation. Madam Speaker, it feeds our families, sustains our economy, and secures our future. Madam Speaker, that is why this government has already poured billions of kwacha into the Farmer Input Support Program and the Food Reserve Agency, as well as other initiatives, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our commitment as the government is unquestionable. But let us be very clear, Madam Speaker, the question is not whether agriculture deserves support. The question is simply increasing the budget, but whether simply increasing the budget will deliver the transformation our farmers truly need. Madam Speaker, as the government, we highly believe in the principle of reform before expansion. Madam Speaker, we must plant reforms before we harvest results. Madam Speaker, this government insists on fixing the systems, strengthening accountability, improving efficiency, and ensuring that every quarter reaches the farmer in time and in full. Madam Speaker, leadership is not about populism, but it's about prudence. Madam Speaker, the economic evidence shows that past increases in funding have not yielded proportional growth. Madam Speaker, agriculture's GDP contribution has declined despite higher allocations. To ignore this reality, Madam Speaker, and simply demand more money is to gamble with the nation's treasury. Madam Speaker, responsible leadership means protecting farmers from inflation, safeguarding our fiscal stability, and ensuring that future investments are smarter, targeted, and productive. Madam Speaker, agriculture must grow, but it must grow sustainably. Madam Speaker, expanding funding without safeguards risk deforestation, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem destruction. Madam Speaker, this government is committed to climate resilience and environmental protection. Madam Speaker, at the same time, we must balance agriculture with other pressing priorities, health care, education, youth employment, and debt repayment, as well as energy security. Madam Speaker, governance is about balance and not reckless spending. Madam Speaker, the government is not opposing agriculture. It is championing it. We are saying, let us reform before we expand. Let us strengthen before we spend. Let us plant accountability before we harvest prosperity. Madam Speaker, increasing the budget without reform is not leadership. It's short-term populism. Reform before expansion, Madam Speaker, is the reform before expansion is the responsible path, and it is the solemn duty of this government, Madam Speaker, to safeguard both the treasury and the future of our farmers. Madam Speaker, with this that I've said, thank you so much.
The Honorable Member for Chisenga, for Livingston, Honorable Matilda Chisenga, to wind up debate.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this profound opportunity again, as I represent the people of Livingston. Madam Speaker, I will speak from a place of passion, great enthusiasm, and speaking on behalf of the people that I represent, knowing that the recent droughts and coupled with erratic rainfall highly affected the people in a negative way. However, as the opposition government, we are urging, and I stand here affirmatively urging the government to support the motion that's on the floor, that's currently on the floor. Why do we need to support the motion? Most of the things obviously have been highlighted. As the opposition, we urge the House to support this particular motion because it's just one way of promoting sustainability. And I wish the House could say this with me, saying that sustainability obviously, the word sustainability comes from the word sustainable development, which means that it's the ability of the present future to provide for their needs without actually compromising. Without actually compromising on how the future generation intends to provide for themselves. However, improving or actually allocating more funds to this sector means that we are going to be self-reliant and sustainable as a country and as a whole. It ensures that we're going to foster what the honorable members earlier spoke about in terms of biodiversity. And obviously, you bear with me that biodiversity is just simply biodiversity is just the existence of animals and plants that really make up the environment.
Honorable Member, be reminded that you are winding up debate.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. Having been reminded that, I urge the House to support the motion that's on the floor. Thank you very much. I submit, Madam Speaker.
I put the question. The question is that this House urges the government to increase the budget allocation to the agricultural sector in the 2027 national budget to enhance productivity and attract investment. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, say no. No. The noes have it. The question is resolved in the negative. Next motion. The Honorable Member from Nkana constituency.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House urges the government to adopt and implement a strengthened national framework on gender-based violence aimed at reducing and escalating cases of gender-based violence.
Is the motion seconded? Seconded by the Honorable Member for Ndola Central, Honorable Ruth Samutundu. The question is that this House urges the government to adopt and implement a strengthened national framework on gender-based violence aimed at reducing the escalating cases of GBV. Any debate? The Honorable Member from Nkana constituency, Honorable Cecilia Bobo.
Madam Speaker, gender-based violence is a pressing issue that has affected countless lives in Zambia today. As a government, we acknowledge that the current laws lack. They need strengthening and they need enhancements. Members of this House, gender-based violence leads to many human rights violations. May I say the human rights violations? The right to freedom from torture, cruel and inhuman treatment, the right to non-discrimination, and its worst, sadly, the right to life. We have seen countless lives lost due to gender-based violence, and we as a government have decided to strengthen the active policies. Members of this House, Madam Speaker, we recognize the current acts that have been
Honorable
placed.
Member, in accordance with Standing Order number 63, you shall only speak through me as the Speaker, and you shall not make reference to the Honorable Members.
Noted with thanks, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we as a government recognize current acts that have already been placed, such as the Domestic Violence Act of 2013 and the Penal Code. These acts criminalize cases of gender-based violence, but more is needed to ensure the safety of our people. Madam Speaker, on the 21st November, the world witnessed South Africa declare gender-based violence as a national disaster. This was an emergency call that needed an urgent resolvement. This set a powerful precedent for African countries, including Zambia, to learn to tackle our own gender-based violence crisis. Madam Speaker, we see this as a signal to implement strategies such as the Victim-Centered Support Unit, which prioritizes medical, legal support for survivors. Madam Speaker, we as a government also see this as an opportunity to strengthen our data collection, engage traditional leaders, and condemn gender-based violence. We see a lot of men silenced by the system of not speaking up because of this, and we as a government have decided to collaborate with local non-governmental organizations to see this as an opportunity to end gender-based violence, the stigma and the silence that has continued for many years. Madam Speaker, I am not only a woman, but I am the Member of Parliament for Kana constituency, Madam Speaker. In my constituency, I have seen the highest forms of gender-based violence. In the current year, recorded as of 2025 December statistics, 1,114 reported cases of gender-based violence. What about the unreported cases, Madam Speaker? These cases, the unreported cases, have been silenced by the stigmas that have been held up by the tradition. Yes, Madam Speaker.
Statistics on the number of reported gender-based cases, are those only from your constituency, in Kana constituency?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to emphasize that these are only the reported cases. They are silenced cases. They are cases where our women, our children, and our men, Madam Speaker, are not able to speak up because of traditional barriers. We as the government have decided that we are going to collaborate with also our chiefs, Madam Speaker, to let our men sensitize and speak up, Madam Speaker. We have heard our women cry. We have seen our children sadly die. We have seen our men weakened and silenced by the traditional systems.
Honorable Member, your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does the seconder wish to speak now or later? You may proceed, Honorable Member for Ndola Central, Honorable Ruth Samutundu.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My name is Ruth Samutundu, Member of Parliament for Ndola Central. I rise today to represent the friendly people in this august house. Madam Speaker, to speak in unwavering support of a government that optimizes vision, courage, and decisive leadership. A government that does not merely draft policies but transforms them into action, protection, and justice. Honorable members, this is a government of integrity. A government that stands boldly with its people, and a government whose commitment to safeguarding lives is unmatched and exemplary. Madam Speaker, gender-based violence is a profound challenge, yet this government has responded with exemplary leadership. Through enhanced coordination, the Zambia Police Service, health institutions, social welfare departments, and the justice systems are now undergoing specialized training to manage GBV cases with professionalism, sensitivity, and urgency. Madam Speaker, through enhanced coordination across the Zambia Police, health institutions, and as well as the justice system, survivors now receive timely protection. Evidence is meticulously preserved and perpetrators face accountability. Honorable members, this is not rhetoric, it is decisive action that changes lives. Madam Speaker, the government has further demonstrated its unrelenting commitment through specialized training of frontline officers. Police officers, health workers, social welfare officers, and the judicial officers are now being offered with equipped skills to manage GBV cases with professionalism, sensitivity, and agency. A testament to this government's excellence and dedication. Madam Speaker, the government has embedded continuous monitoring and evaluation into every intervention by tracking progress, measuring outcomes, and correcting deficiencies. Honorable members, this is evidence that this government is a government that works tirelessly, a government that delivers.
Honorable Member.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
I'll guide you to standing order number 63. You shall only speak through me. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is evidence of a government that works tirelessly, a government that delivers, and a government that protects its citizens. Madam Speaker, to suggest that this government is not working would not only be inaccurate but also deeply disrespectful. Evidence is before us. The motion is not a criticism of government performance.
Honorable Member, point of order has been raised. You may proceed, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, you are indeed out of order in accordance with Standing Orders number 71. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This motion is not a criticism of government performance, but a commitment to build on existing progress, hence strengthening the national framework on GBV. I fully support this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member from Kushi North, Honorable Margaret Kasanda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Mukushi North this opportunity to speak before this dignified house of intellectuals. My name is Margaret Kasanda. And allow me to begin by stating that the motion at hand is of great significance. Not only does it affect the women, and we know that the largest percentage of Zambia's population, which is 51%, is women. And we see that gender-based violence victims are not only women. We find that even our men, 21% of them, they are facing financial abuse and they are ending up being in debt crisis. That is why, Madam Speaker, I'm speaking on behalf of the many women as a future mother of this
Honorable
nation.
Member, how is financial abuse related to the gender-based violence? Please, in accordance with Standing Order number 71, make sure your debate is within the confines of the subject matter.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Allow me to exemplify my point by stating that when a man is financially put in abuse, they tend to be psychologically abused by the women. And that is also a form of gender-based violence. Madam Speaker, allow me to state that I'm a true daughter of the soil, and there's a Zambian saying that states, "Umupama pamo atulile nguma," which simply means that emphasis on one thing brings impact. The current government gives us a rhetoric speech. They tell us how beautiful they want to create cases of GBV. They want to create another framework, which we do not need. What we need is simply implementation. Madam Speaker, we see in the current 2026 budget being presented by the Minister of Finance, and we see that the gender division out of 253.1 billion kwacha, we see them only receiving 55.2 million, which is less than 0.03%. Madam Speaker, it is quite saddening that the government knows the problem and refuses to fund the solution. Madam Speaker, what I am saying is that the government should understand that we already have existing frameworks such as the Anti-GBV Act of 2011, comprehensive in its nature, stating that the current government should provide a GBV fund allocation. But we see in the national budget that the GBV has no separation or fund allocated for it alone. We see that the government has hidden it into these rhetoric governmental statements. That is not what we need. Madam Speaker.
Order, Honorable Member. Order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Allow me to further state
I'm urging the government that the government should work on implementation. What the government should be doing is giving awareness. The people of Mukushi, the mothers are crying. They need clarity. They need understanding. We see the government telling us about what they intend to do, but we see they do not even understand where they need to edit, what work they need to do. They're giving us rhetoric speeches. As a future mother of this nation and a daughter of the soil, I advise the government, in true respect, that the government should work and submit more funds to the GBV. They should work on giving awareness to the people. The people of Mukushi North need to trust you again, for we have lost our trust. As women, we are tired. In conclusion, I advise the government, understand the motion at hand. If you want to understand it better, reject the motion at hand. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Order. The honorable member for Dundumwezi constituency, Honorable Faith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for according me this opportunity to speak up for the people of Dundumwezi. We see how gender-based violence affects families and disrupts communities. As the representative of Dundumwezi, I urge this House to strengthen our national response on this critical issue of GBV. A national framework will provide the structures and support needed to address this issue at a local level. It will also ensure that rural areas like my constituency
Order. Honorable member, please speak. You are very much protected. It is your right.
It will ensure that rural areas like mine have the resources and services to protect and support survivors. We must focus on prevention, not just response. Education programs targeting both boys and girls will be essential. Engaging boys in schools and communities will help address the harmful gender norms and reduce future violence. A key aspect of this framework should be economic support for survivors in Dundumwezi, offering skill trainings.
Honorable member, a point of order has been raised. Honorable member, in accordance with Standing Order number 64, a member shall not read a speech but shall make reference to copious notes. You are out of order and you may proceed.
I'll proceed with that caution, Madam Speaker.
Order, honorable members. You may proceed, honorable member.
Okay. A key aspect of this framework should be the economic support. We should offer skills training and financial independence to people in my constituency. It's crucial to involve men and boys in the fight against gender-based violence by addressing toxic masculinity and encouraging respectful relationships. We can reduce violence and promote a culture of equality and mutual respect. As a government, we have a moral duty to protect all citizens from harm. Strengthening our national framework is an essential step in
Honorable member, your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honorable member for Nchanga constituency, Honorable Josephine Chindede.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Josephine Chindele, Member of Parliament for Nchanga constituency. Madam Speaker, it is worth noting that the strength of any law, the strength of any policy is not only about how appealing or how strong it seems to be in the eyes of those that are formulating it or in the eyes of those that are looking at it, but it is about how strong its implementation is. Madam Speaker, therefore, the current GBV framework that is currently in operation, for instance, the Anti-GBV Act number 1 of 2011, is strong enough to reduce the escalating GBV cases in the country. Madam Speaker, creating another framework would just mean that it will be as symbolic as the current GBV framework, Madam Speaker, because it will just be without real impact. Madam Speaker, I am aware that the GBV cases are actually increasing. From 2011, we had about 12,000 cases of GBV, and as of 2024 actually, we have close to 42,000 cases, reported cases of GBV, meaning that it could be more because these are just reported cases, Madam Speaker. Now, the problem is not the framework. The problem is not the law. The problem is implementation, weak implementation, Madam Speaker, of the frameworks that we have as a country. Madam Speaker, the Anti-GBV Act of 2011 already deals with the root of the problem while dealing with the problem itself. Madam Speaker, it does so through prohibiting harmful traditional practices that perpetuate GBV. For instance, we have property grabbing that it has enshrined in the law. It deals with also forced marriages and early marriages as well. Madam Speaker, it is broad enough in its approach, in its definition of GBV as well, which in itself is dealing with it. It goes beyond the physical abuse that we know, the battering and all that, but it goes even to economic abuse. Something that is actually so much prevalent in my constituency, where you find that a woman is told not to work because she is married or because the husband is regarded as more powerful than her. Because of that, the Anti-GBV Act is explicitly dealing with this case, but they are not implemented accordingly. And that is why we're calling on the government to implement and not just formulate policies. Madam Speaker, the Act also provides for the Anti-GBV Fund, which is enough to deal with these cases, Madam Speaker. They are increasing because the implementation is weak. Madam Speaker, therefore I urge all honorable members of this House to support strengthened implementation.
Time is up.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Order! Order, honorable members. I wish to inform the House that moving forward, I will not admit any points of order. This is aimed at ensuring that there is free and fair flow of debate. So may the House be guided. We are running out of time. The Honorable Member for Chimwemwe constituency, Honorable Lusungu Nyirenda.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for according my constituents in Chimwemwe this opportunity to voice our reservations over the government's proposed strengthened national policy framework on gender-based violence. To start with, I'll start with institutional capacity. Clause 1 calls for strengthened GBV response systems through improved coordination of the Zambia Police, the Ministry of Health, and the Community Development Prosecution Authority. And these reforms will have to be instituted to prevent bureaucracy from happening. We will need a unified digital tracking system that allows for visibility of reported causes immediately that they are reported. Number 2, Madam Speaker, I'll go to fiscal prudence and sustainable funding. The expansion of centers and shelters will require substantial and recurrent expenditure. Madam Speaker, we must avoid unfunded mandates. In these centers, if these centers are to be more than just an empty building, we need line item commitment, Madam Speaker. Which revenue streams will be used to fund these centers to avoid jeopardizing other vital systems? Number 3 is the leave no one behind mantra of the 8th National Development Plan, Madam Speaker, which is intersectional inclusivity. While survivor centers services are mentioned, the policy lacks explicit provisions for services for people with disabilities. For example, Madam Speaker, if a survivor is deaf, there is no interpreter that is going to help them when they want to report a case to the police. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we must move from being inclusive in theory and being inclusive in accessibility and infrastructure. Madam Speaker, my constituents in Chimwemwe deserve effective, affordable measures against GBV. And therefore, this framework must be financially viable, culturally sensitive, and institutionally realistic. I propose that transparent funding plans and piloted implementation should be looked at before committing the nation to this expansive program. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Mnali constituency, Honorable Chishimba Songwe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Songwe Chimba, Member of Parliament from Nali constituency. As I stand today to contribute to this critical debate, strengthening our national policy framework on gender-based violence. Madam Speaker, the statistics of gender-based violence in the third quarter of 2025 is alarming, yet telling. While we comment the 8.2 decline, we cannot be celebrating. While women and girls continue to bear the heaviest burden of violence. Madam Speaker, the data shows that 79% of gender-based violence, Madam Speaker, there are 79%
Honorable member. Standing order number 69 stipulates that an honorable member shall not be interrupted during their debate. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the data shows that women and girls account for 79% of gender-based violence victims. Madam Speaker, what is the government doing to ensure that child marriage and support survivors is surely being seen? We need action, not just words. Madam Speaker, we already have the multi-phase approach to address GBV. I call on the government to fund the GBV support services and implement comprehensive education. Madam Speaker, we need a comprehensive measures, not just words. We need more action, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member. The Honorable Members, I can hear some murmuring in the House. The murmuring is too much. Be reminded that this is the most dignified House in the country. We are here to represent the needs of our people, the good people of Zambia. But that does not mean that we should murmur. We will do so through our debate. Honorable Member, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in my constituency, in Minari constituency, we have seen how devastating impact of gender-based violence on families and communities. Madam Speaker, I urge my fellow Member of Parliament to join me in advocating for more resources and support for GBV survivors. We owe this to ourselves, to our children and the future generation. We need to create a Zambia where girls, women can live without the fear of violence Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Member for Monze constituency, Honorable Edith Kaite Chikunda.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Monze constituency a voice in this August House. My name is Chifunda Idikaiti, Member of Parliament for Monze constituency. Madam Speaker, while laws on gender-based violence exist, the challenge is in the weak coordination, Madam Speaker. Survivors are pushed from police stations to hospitals to courtrooms, Madam Speaker. This is because there is an unified system, Madam Speaker. A strengthened national framework ensures that institutions respond as one, making protection effective rather than fragmentation, which we already have, Madam Speaker. This country does not suffer from lack of frameworks, Madam Speaker, but from poor implementation. Adopting another national framework risks duplicating policies, while the real challenges, which is enforcement, remains unaddressed. Madam Speaker, we have an existing framework, which is the Gender-Based Violence Act of 2011, which has not been fully implemented or utilized to its full capacity. Madam Speaker, therefore it is a reasonable question to ask why the government is trying to introduce a new framework instead of strengthening and fully utilizing the already existing one. Madam Speaker, the motion assumes centralization is the solution. However, gender-based violence is deeply rooted in local dynamics, Madam Speaker. A rigid framework may overlook community-specific realities, looking at intervention less effective at grassroots level. Madam Speaker, this motion prioritizes structural reform over accountability for institutions that are already failing. Before new solutions, this House must demand results from already existing institutions that protect the victims, Madam Speaker. For these reasons, I oppose this motion and I urge the House to oppose as well. Thank you very much.
Order, honorable members. The Honorable Minister of Community Development, Honorable Natasha Piri. Order.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. It is always such an honor to represent the humble people of Kankoyo constituency in this dignified and highly esteemed House. Madam Speaker, the motion set before us is one that should be taken with utmost urgency and not ignorance. Why, Madam Speaker? Because gender-based violence is an issue that is a serious violation to human rights. It affects women, men, as well as children. Madam Speaker, gender-based violence distorts peace in society. Madam Speaker, gender-based violence limits people, children, men and women alike. It limits them from living out their full God-given capacity in society, therefore hindering social development of human beings. Madam Speaker, as the government, we are not a government that just sits down and watches when the country is suffering. No. What we do then, Madam Speaker, when the country is suffering, when the good people of Zambia are facing a crisis, we rise and we take action. Madam Speaker, it appears to me that the opposition does not comprehend this motion. So therefore, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, allow me to break it down for the easy digestion of the motion. Madam Speaker, as the government, we are not saying that we are creating something new. As the government, we are saying that we are strengthening the existing policies that we have. Because we are saying that, okay, of course we do have policies, we do have laws, but they are not enough, which is why we are strengthening the already existing policies that are there. Madam Speaker, the opposing delegation raised the point during the previous speaker, which says that we are not doing enough.
Honorable member, be guided. They are your fellow honorable members and not the speakers.
Apologies, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
The opposition raised a point earlier that as government we're not doing enough awareness. But may I bring it to the attention of this House that On November 26, we as the Community Development and Social Services Ministry, we collaborated with the National Prosecution Authority to sensitize people in Limulunga, and that is in Western Province. People are not being neglected. Even in rural areas, we are strengthening this. Madam Speaker, as the government, we are not bringing in something new. I would like to bring it to the attention of this House, but instead, we are strengthening the policies that we have. I urge you all to support this motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Gender, Child and Social Welfare, Honorable Anna.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. My name is Anna Banda. I am the Minister of Gender, Child and Social Welfare. Madam Speaker, as we are aware that Zambia already has a legal framework on gender-based violence, which is the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act of 2011. It criminalizes GBV, provides for protection orders and counseling and shelters for victims. We also have the Penal Code, Madam Speaker, Chapter number 87 of the laws of Zambia, which penalizes gender-based violence. And we have the Constitution, Act number 2 of 2016, which protects human dignity, equality and freedom from inhuman degrading treatment. Madam Speaker, gender-based violence is one of the pervasive human rights violations, and a persistence in GBV cases demonstrates before us a challenge which is not legislative absence but an implementation weakness. We as a government have acknowledged that there's an implementation gap with our GBV laws, and therefore we have come up with a solution, which is to adopt and implement a strengthened national policy on gender-based violence. Madam Speaker, allow me to peruse through the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act. We have lacunas in the Anti-GBV Act. Allow me to peruse through these lacunas in the Act. I will highlight 3 lacunas. The first lacuna that we have, Madam Speaker, is under Section 32 of the Act, which provides for the establishment of funds. However, Madam Speaker, there is no dedicated budget for shelters, counseling, forensic services, and victim support. Funding is at the discretion of the court or the police, and it is donor dependent. We have the second lacuna, Madam Speaker, under Section 24 of the Act, which provides for the establishment of shelters and services for victims. However, Madam Speaker, there is no minimum standard of shelters in each district. And lastly, Madam Speaker, we have noticed that there is no legal binding framework on gender-based violence.
Member, your time is up. The Honorable Member from Kana Constituency, Honorable Cecilia Bobo, to wind up debate.
Madam Speaker, I'll remind this House that gender-based violence is not a new matter. That this is a matter that has gone on for years, and our women, our men, and our children are all affected. Madam Speaker, we as a government have decided that these laws that are already there, they are not laws that have been effective. We are here to equip, sensitize, and advocate. Madam Speaker, as a government, I feel that the opposition did not understand our stance as a government. Because, Madam Speaker, we clearly said that our aim is to enhance these acts, that our aim is to implement more strategic acts, and we have clearly stated through the former speakers that we have the vision to end and to decrease gender-based violence. We cannot sit here as a government and watch gender-based violence cases rise. We cannot sit here as a government when lives are at hand, Madam Speaker. When it is a matter that has gone on for years. Madam Speaker, the Bemba proverb says, imiti ikula empanga. The grass of today are the trees of tomorrow, Madam Speaker. our children are dying in gender-based violence cases. Who is the future of tomorrow if we let this happen, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, there is not much to say. I just urge this House to come with us as a government to implement and enhance these gender-based violence policies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order, honorable members. I put the question. The question is that the House urges the government to adopt and implement a strengthened national framework on gender-based violence aimed at reducing the escalating cases of GBV. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, say no. No. The ayes have it. Her Honor the Vice President, adjournment. The question is that the House now adjourns. Any debate? Any objection? The question is agreed to. The House is now adjourned.
Good afternoon. You are tuned into Parliamentary television. You've just been watching the Youth Parliament, and they were debating three motions. Among them, that the House urges the government to adopt and implement a strengthened national framework on gender-based violence and at reducing the escalating cases of GBV. And the other motion that the House urges the government to establish open borders with neighboring countries within the SADC to promote regional integration, trade, tourism, and economic cooperation. So those are some of the motions that were being debated by the youths. And so that note brings us to the end of this live broadcast. Remember to join us at 14:30 as the Committee on Local Government Accounts continues to interact with local authorities. Until then, it's good afternoon and pleasant viewing.